What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Santa Claus. If you haven't already, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Also, drop in and leave us a good review wherever you get your podcast. Really helps get the show out there to a lot more people, and I just really appreciate it. So, today on the show, of course, I'm talking about the Santa Claus from 1994, starring Tim Allen. This movie is 30 years old now, which is crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been that long since this movie came out. This is a movie that I kind of come back to every now and then. It's not a movie I watch every single year or anything like that. And actually, just rewatching it for this review, there's kind of a good reason for that. Now, I am a Tim Allen fan. As you can see, I'm wearing a Tool Time shirt. Pretty big home improvement fan. I was a big fan of it when I was a kid, watching it all the time with my dad and stuff. And then growing up now, I've actually rewatched it on occasions because it's on like Disney Plus. I believe it was on Hulu at one point. Very funny show. If you haven't seen Home Improvement, definitely check it out because this movie came out in 1994. It was at the height of Tim Allen's, career. Tim Allen was a household name with Home Improvement, which was one of the biggest sitcoms on at that time. You have the Santa Claus, Toy Story was out, and he was doing a bunch of other things as well. He's a comedian and whatnot. And he was also working with the director of this movie, John Pasquin, a decent bit because John Pasquin directed a decent amount of episodes of Home Improvement. He directed this movie, and he also directed Jungle to Jungle, which starred Tim Allen. And I believe he directed a movie with Tim Allen in like the early 2000s. I think it was called Joe Somebody. I think I've only seen it like once or twice, way back whenever it came out. But he's worked with John Pasquin a decent amount throughout his career, even like as of late. I think on his last TV show, I forget what it was called. I think like Last Man Standing or something. I don't know. I haven't really seen any of his most recent stuff. I believe he directed some episodes of that as well. And I mean, as of lately, a lot of people have different opinions about Tim Allen just because of how vocal he's been with certain things. A lot of stuff I don't get into on the channel. I like to keep it to movies and movies only, really. But I mean, as far as like an actor and stuff that he's been in, I'm a fan of Tim Allen. He just has something about him. He has that charisma. He has that like just a voice that you can just tell, oh, that's Tim Allen. And I can listen to this dude. He's one of those actors that I can just listen and narrate certain things, like Morgan Freeman. I would love to have a day just narrated by Morgan Freeman. Same thing with Tim Allen. There's something about his voice is just kind of calming or soothing. And he just plays like a decent, like as far as Home Improvement, he just plays like that great, like kind of father figure throughout like whatever he's doing. Now in this movie, I would say like maybe the first like half hour, half of the movie, he's kind of, not a dad that's not all there. He's a little cranky, but that's part of his character and part of the development he has throughout the movie, though. Now, as far as cast, of course, you have Tim Allen, who plays Scott Calvin, who ends up becoming Santa Claus. You have his son Charlie, played by Eric Lloyd, who's decent throughout the movie. Kind of gets a little annoying at certain points, but that's kind of part of his character as well. And that's just kind of my thing with child actors. They can really come off annoying sometimes. But I think, especially through a lot of the emotional parts of the movie, he does a good job. You have Wendy Carlson as his ex-wife, Laura, in the movie, and also Judge Reinhold, who plays Neil, who is like the stepfather, who's kind of the antagonist, I would say, if you want to call it that, throughout the movie. Now, to kind of go back to what I alluded to before about why I don't watch this movie like on a yearly basis with other movies I watch, like Home Alone or A Christmas Story on every single year, it's because this movie is kind of sad, man. And I'm not saying it's as sad as It's a Wonderful Life, which I reviewed at the beginning of the month. If you haven't seen that one, definitely go check out the review. But it's definitely sad, and it's kind of upsetting to think of it from like the parents' point of view, like his ex-wife and the stepfather, Neil. It's kind of upsetting to kind of see it from their point of view now that you're an adult, because for those who don't know about the basic plot of this movie, you follow Scott Calvin, who's played by Tim Allen. He works very hard. He works for like this toy company or whatever. He's not always there for his kid and stuff. You know how these movies go and whatnot. He's not always there and around. His son doesn't even really want to hang out with him, to be with him on Christmas. He wants to stay with his mom and Neil. His stepdad Neil. It's never really said that it's his stepdad. He's just kind of there. It's his mom's boyfriend or whatever. It seems like it's the stepdad, kind of that relationship. But his stepdad Neil's like a psychiatrist or a psychologist, whatever. And he's teaching Charlie all these things. He listens to him and everything. He's the new, nice, fun guy around that teaches him everything. Of course, he doesn't get along with Neil at all, just being that ex-husband and then the new guy in town type thing. Of course, they're going to butt heads, and there's some comedy here and there throughout that. And Judge Reinhold just kind of plays that character perfectly throughout the movie, just kind of being that douche who kind of oversteps his boundaries at certain points because he thinks he's doing what's best for Charlie, and he's kind of putting it in the mind of the mother to do certain things that maybe she doesn't want to do as far as what's best for the kid. Scott has Charlie for the night for over Christmas Eve for Christmas Day, and his mom's going to pick him up the next morning. Things don't really go as planned. He was going to make a dinner, but it's going to take like 4 hours. He ends up catching the turkey on fire and everything. So they decide to go to Denny's, and there's like the pretty funny scene because there's like three or four other dads that are there with their kids because they failed cooking dinner. One dude has like his hands all wrapped up because he burned his hands and such. Pretty funny scene. And Denny's is like out of everything because they're coming late at night. I'm sure there's a ton of people through the day there. There's a big like business party that's happening there or whatnot. And when the ex-wife drops Charlie off, she tells Scott that he was having trouble with school. The kids were saying that, Santa Claus doesn't exist. And then Neil kind of went and even confirmed that, like, yeah, you're getting up there now. It's, Santa Claus doesn't exist. You have to kind of face reality. And Scott's just not cool with that. I mean, this kid's very young. Like, you should let him believe in Santa Claus as long as he wants to believe in Santa Claus. It doesn't hurt him by any means to believe in Santa. So and that kind of starts the tiff between the ex-wife and Neil and everything and Scott. And that night, he's just trying to convince him even further that Santa Claus is real. Charlie's asking him a lot of questions, and he's kind of getting annoyed. You know how it is. Kids just keep asking question after question after question after question. That night, they start hearing some things on the roof. Charlie goes and wakes his dad up. He goes out, and lo and behold, Santa Claus is up on the roof, and Scott startles him so bad that he slips and falls off the roof, and he dies. He dies on impact. He kills Santa Claus by startling him, and he falls off the roof. He goes through his pockets to get his wallet and ID so he can kind of report it and find out who this guy is. And of course, it's Santa Claus. And it says, if there's anything that ever happens to me, put my coat on. The reindeer will know what to do. They find the reindeer up on the roof. It takes them a while for Charlie to convince his dad to put on the coat and kind of go through, but you actually have them going and delivering the presents for all these kids throughout the night. And Scott, of course, is very hesitant on this. He doesn't want to believe in everything, but I mean, the evidence is right in front of you. You just saw a guy disappear in the snow. The body just disappears, and then the suit's theirs to take with you. There's reindeer up on the roof with all the names of the reindeer, but yet it takes them so long to finally believe that this is actually real, even though it was right in front of you. You're literally flying through the sky on a sleigh, going down through chimneys. It explains how Santa Claus gets into houses for houses that don't have, fireplaces or everything. It just makes one in the wall with magic. It's actually kind of cool. I mean, it's the early 90s special effects, so they don't look great as far as, seeing the sleigh fly through the sky, the fireplaces coming up in the middle of these houses. The special effects aren't all that great, but I mean, that's part of the time period and kind of part of the charm of the movie. But after finishing all the deliveries that he has to, the reindeer take him back to the North Pole, and he gets introduced to the elves and Bernard, who's kind of walking him through everything and explaining to him, like, yeah, you saw Santa, what happened to Santa when he fell off the roof. You pick up the card, you read the card, you put on the clothes, you're part, you fell into the Santa Claus. And he's like, well, I mean, it's Santa Claus. He's like, no, it's the Santa Claus, like the clause, the last line, or like the contract or whatever. It's literally the Santa Claus. Now you're a Santa. You have to be Santa going forward. Now you have to like forego your identity and everything you had previously. You are officially Santa Claus now. And of course, as like a rational person, you don't believe that this is all happening. You don't want to just like leave up and leave your whole life behind and everything. So he's like, I just want to go home, man. I just want to do this. I just want to leave. And man, I just want to say, like, the set design and everything as far as the North Pole and everything, it's very like, for lack of like better term from like what I could think of, is very whimsical and magical. I wouldn't say it's exactly what you would think of when you think of like Santa's workshop or the North Pole, but it's a lot of like these big sets and like lots of bright colors and toys. The elves are just all these little children, but they say that they're like 1,000 years old or whatever. It's all very cool. It's all very well planned out. And one of my only real nitpicks about this movie is that you don't really spend a lot of time at the North Pole. I wish you spent a lot more time kind of going over everything that Santa has to do. It's all kind of narrowed down into like a montage towards the end of the movie, and just a little bit explained when he's explaining about the Santa Claus and everything. Them walking him, Tim Allen, through everything, explaining this is what you have to do. Maybe some training stuff. I don't know. I just feel like they could have dove into that world a little bit more throughout this movie, just because that's the most exciting aspects of it. Because like I mentioned, this movie kind of gets sad throughout the rest of it because That next day, whenever they come back, of course, Charlie remembers. He's super excited that his dad's going to be Santa Claus. He went to the North Pole. He saw a lot of cool things. But of course, everybody around him doesn't believe him. His mom doesn't believe him. His stepdad Neil doesn't believe him. His own classmates don't believe him when he brings his dad in for career day and he tries to tell him that he's Santa Claus. He's like, well, no, I work for a toy company. It's kind of like Santa Claus. But the whole movie is kind of like this psychological type thing where the parents are so worried about this kid because he literally thinks that his dad is Santa Claus. And even Tim Allen is kind of going through it like, this can't be real. Like, I'm not really Santa Claus. Like, this actually didn't happen. It was all a bad dream type thing until the happenings start. He starts gaining a lot of weight. He starts growing the big white bushy beard and he's trying to lose all the weight. He's going to a doctor. He's running on a treadmill. He's working out. He keeps shaving, but the beard comes right back. And those are some of the funnier aspects of the movie. Is just some of his like Tim Allen's just his mannerisms and the way he reacts to certain things. He even gets the home improvement grunt in there whenever they're first delivering presents. He does the ho ho ho, like the ho ho ho. Just the home improvement fan in me. I love that type of shit. It really gets to a sad point because the mom and the stepdad Neil, they really think that Charlie being around his dad is affecting him in a bad way. He really thinks that he's Santa Claus. He just wants to be in the North Pole all the time. He's, pretending that he's, running the sled in his room with chairs and stuff. He's really getting into this. And of course, because, adults, they don't believe in Santa Claus. They don't believe in magic and everything. And they believe Tim Allen's kind of pushing him into it or leaning into it. And it's not good for his mental health in the long run. And they even go so far where Neil convinces the mom to take full-time custody of Charlie and everything and take him away from his dad. And it's a sad point, man. And I mean, just coming from being a kid and, my parents being divorced and going through like stuff like that, it's rough to sit and watch. And especially being a Disney movie, it's kind of has, I wouldn't say a dark undertone to it, but it's kind of heavy because it has to deal with real family issues, even though it's Santa Claus and, magical whimsical type stuff. There's some kind of heavy subject matter in here where they're trying to take his child away from him and he doesn't want to lose his kid. And it's like, how do you realistically explain to somebody like, yeah, I'm actually Santa Claus. What he's saying is real. And I mean, he even like pulls him aside one time and he tells Charlie, like, listen, this has got to be a secret between me and you. You can't just be going out telling everybody about me being Santa Claus and the North Pole and whatever. And then the kid agrees and he even like bribes him with $5. But then he ends up telling like the judge at one point about everything because he thinks it's going to help the case. And that's really what pushes the judge to give the mom full-time custody and everything. It surprisingly hit me a little harder than I expected because I normally go a while in between watches. Like last time I watched this was, I don't even know, like 6, 7 years ago or something now. And time I watched it before that was even longer, I'm sure. So I kind of forget the stuff that happens within this movie between each time I watch it. So it kind of affected me a little bit this time. It was a little heavy. Even though it's a lighthearted kids movie at certain times, it has its funny moments. It has kind of its childish humor with like some fart jokes here and there or whatever. But it also has that kind of Tim Allen humor that incorporates throughout Home Improvement and his comedy and stuff like that. But like I said, some of the best parts of this movie, though, are the Santa Claus parts. Like beginning of the movie where he has to be Santa Claus and he's, delivering presents. And the one girl, he's like, you don't look like Santa Claus. You're skinny and you don't have a beard. And he's like, well, I lost weight. I shaved my face. Go to sleep. What are you doing? What are you doing up? Come on, go to bed. And he's just being like impatient with these kids and everything. And then by the end of the movie, he's really bought into being Santa Claus. He knows exactly what he's doing. He really cares about, getting the presents to the kids and the kids across the world that need a good Christmas and everything. And it's just that kind of evolution and that character arc for him throughout the movie that kind of helps it and cements this movie as, I don't know if I would say it's a Christmas classic, but it cements it as a really good Christmas movie in a way. And the only other nitpick I kind of have about the movie is using a ZZ Top song for one of the montages. And it was like, you really couldn't have found like a rock version of a Christmas song to throw in here for a montage. You had to use a weird ZZ Top song that didn't fit really at all given the subject matter of the movie in this or ever. Maybe you just wanted a popular song to throw in there, but like out of all songs, ZZ Top, and I think it was like all my loving. Like, why would you put this in a kids' Christmas movie. It was such a weird. It kind of threw me off a little bit. But the heaviness doesn't stop with just losing custody. He goes to the house to say goodbye to his kid for a while, and then he ends up taking him with him. So technically, he ends up kidnapping his own kid to take with him to the North Pole to help him, prepare for Christmas and everything. And it's lighthearted. The kids out here helping, design a new sleigh and design new things. Like he's getting like a fireproof suit, he's getting a new sleigh and everything, and he's always worried about like, but what if I fall off this roof? That's what happened to the last Santa. What if I fall off the roof? That's the only thing I don't want to happen. And the only real thing they do to prevent that is the reindeer comet gives him a rope to help him out. But he ends up kidnapping his own kid to take him to the North Pole. So back home, the mom and the stepdad are worried sick. They're calling the police. They're looking everywhere for him. They have the police, surrounding the house on Christmas night because they expect him to come back dressed as Santa Claus because he's crazy. He must be crazy. He's going to come back dressed as Santa Claus and everything. Behind the scenes, even though it's kind of played as like a lighthearted movie, like thinking about it from the other parent's point of view, like that's gotta be crazy, man. Like that's gotta be some heavy stuff. Like you have to go through with taking your child away from their father, and then he comes and kidnaps the child. You don't know where either of them are or what they're doing. Like it's gotta be terrifying for that mom and everything to go through all of that. But like it's a Disney Christmas movie. It's played up for laughs and everything, but it's kind of heavy in a way. But of course, he comes back because he has to deliver the presents to every single house, including his own kid's house. The police end up catching him and end up taking him to jail. So they end up having to send the elves out, the elf squad, and they have like these jetpacks and everything. They end up going and pick up Charlie. They end up bussing him out of prison so they can go and finish their deliveries and everything. And this is one of my only other nitpicks of the movie is he ends up returning to the house and he kind of has a confrontation with his ex-wife and the stepdad Neil. And he ends up having this speech about how he thinks it's better for Charlie to stay with his mom and everything because he can't be selfish. He can't be selfish to want to stay with his kid. He has to go out and, deliver presents to all these other kids around the whole world. He can't be selfish in this time. And his kid recognizes that. And this is definitely one of the scenes that, as far as being a child actor, the kid that plays Charlie does tremendous. Like I actually believe him. Like he's crying because his dad is leaving because his dad's Santa Claus. He has a job to go do and he has to leave. And this is kind of my nitpick is because this scene is what makes the wife believe. Just because of this little monologue that Tim Allen has, the wife is like, "Oh my God, I get it now. You're actually Santa Claus." Whereas like there's she didn't see any single evidence that he's Santa Claus, like any type of magical stuff or anything at that point, up until Bernard comes in, eating, Neil's food and everything, and then he disappears. But she believed before that. She just all of a sudden realizes that he's Santa Claus and believes in him because of this single monologue that he has, just pretty much just saying how selfless he is and how unselfish he is because he has to go out and deliver these presents. He has to leave his son and everything. Where it's like I can understand that could be a part of it, but I believe he should have had to prove that he was Santa some other way. Like, hey, come up into this sled. I'll give you a ride. I'll show you that I'm Santa Claus, or I'll do some type of magic type thing to prove that I'm Santa. That way, and of course, that kind of comes into play, but she already believes at that point when she has a point in the movie where she says that she used to write Santa all the time when she was a kid, and there was like this date game thing that she wanted, and he never got it for her. And Neil says that he had like there was like this Oscar Mayer like wiener whistle that he wanted or something. It's such a weird fucking toy to pick, by the way. At 3 years old, he said he stopped believing in Santa at 3 years old. But at the towards the very end of the movie, as Tim Allen's flying away as Santa Claus, you see these packages drop, and it's the game that his ex-wife always wanted as a kid, and Neil gets the little wiener whistle that he wanted and everything. Where it's like, I think that probably should have been in that scene where after he had that monologue about, being selfless and not wanting to be selfish and having to leave, he pulls out those gifts to give to them to prove, hey, I'm Santa Claus. Because by the time that he actually gives them those gifts, the wife already believes in them anyway. It doesn't have any type of effect. Like it makes Neil believe at that point, but like the wife already believed. So it's like it doesn't really have as much of an impact as it would have if he would have given those presents to them whenever, they were having that original confrontation. But of course, Santa has a job to do after that, and he ends up taking Charlie with him to kind of finish the rest of his run and everything and finish out the night. And he's officially Santa Claus at that point from going forward. And as everybody knows, they made Santa Claus 2, which I actually did see whenever it came out. I haven't really seen it since. I've only seen it a couple times. I haven't seen it since I've been an adult, to be honest. And I've never seen Santa Claus 3. I believe that one has Martin Short in it, from what I remember. Because I remember the TV spots whenever it was coming out and everything. Never actually seen the movie, and I'm pretty sure they released like a series on Disney Plus a couple years back of the Santa Claus, and they brought Tim Allen back to do that. Never once heard anything on it, like if it was good or bad. Haven't really even seen a trailer on it or anything. I probably should have watched the trailer of it before I did this review, but I haven't really heard anything of it other than just knowing it as a thing. And I saw one screenshot of him as the Santa Claus. But it's wild that even like when the TV show came out in 20, what was it, 2020, 2022, maybe, that there's still demand for the Santa Claus. And honestly, I'm surprised they didn't keep making sequels. Like I'm surprised that there is only 3 movies and like what, a season of a TV show. Like, as far as Disney's concerned, I thought, I'm surprised they didn't milk that franchise for all it's worth. And I'm sure Tim Allen would have gladly came back to do as many of them as possible, unless it was his idea that he didn't want to do too many of them. But the movie as a whole, I think it's a good movie overall. I wouldn't say like it's a ton of fun for kids though. I mean, there's jokes here and there. I think, like, from what I remember, the Santa Claus 2 is way more like kid friendly and everything like that. I just feel like there's a lot more like stuff going on in this movie geared towards like adults and that adults would understand. I mean, even as a kid, this wasn't one that I would go back to very often. There was definitely some funny scenes in it, but the movie as a whole, like, it definitely deals with some heavier subject matter that's going to go over a kid's head. But as an adult, I can kind of appreciate it in a way. I wish it didn't dive too far into the kind of the heavier subject matter about like losing his kid and everything. Like I mentioned, I wish it would have dove into the whole Santa aspect of it more, like with him in the North Pole, learning everything, getting his, grasp on everything, instead of kind of having it reduced to a montage towards the back half of the movie and everything. But I mean, that's what the Santa Claus 2, 3, and everything else is for, as far as like staying in the North Pole and doing everything else, I guess. Maybe they were saving it all for the sequels. Who knows? But like, out of a buy it, rent it, or miss it, I would probably say rent this movie. This is on. I wouldn't say it's good enough to add to my collection, even though I like Tim Allen, even though I think he's fantastic in this movie, and it's a good movie. But I wouldn't say add this one to the collection. I don't think it's anywhere near like some of the top tier Christmas movies. But overall, I think it's a very solid movie. Definitely funny. Had me chuckling at certain points. It has definitely some funny parts in it. Good Christmas songs throughout. Just wish they would have kind of left that ZZ Top, kind of replaced it with something else. Solid acting throughout as well. I don't think there was too many spots that was like, oof, that's a little rough. Maybe from the kid at certain points, but man, by the end of it, when he has to tear up and he's having that an emotional, scene with Tim Allen and everything, that makes up for everything. Kid did very well in that role, and I think everybody played their role pretty well, especially Judge Reinhold, and just being that douche character. You hate him throughout the whole thing because you just know he's influencing that wife so much to make these decisions, and like, you fucking jerk. Why would you want to try to convince a kid that Santa Claus doesn't exist? Come on now. And they keep saying like he's old enough. Like, this kid, he's like, what? He's like 6 years old. Like, come on now. Like, let the kid believe in Santa Claus. But anyway, that's my review of the Santa Claus. Let me know what you think about the movie in the comments below. What you like about it, what you don't like about it. Is it one of your favorite Christmas movies that you watch every year? Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Cinema Trip Reviews. Also, drop in and leave us a good review wherever you get your podcast. Helps the show out. And I'll see everybody next time.